Good morning, guys. Time for another breastfeeding video. Today I thought that I would talk about experiencing pain while breastfeeding and if that is normal. Some of you might be pregnant and this video caught your attention. Maybe you were searching it because it's something that you heard. Maybe you just happened upon it, or maybe you're subscribed and it's a concern that you have. So whether you're actually experiencing pain or you're worried that if you breastfeed, there'll be pain, that it's going to hurt. And this video hopefully will address those concerns. Of course, you've probably heard both sides, that breastfeeding is painful. And then you've also possibly heard, if you've ever done some research on latching and how to get the baby to latch and proper holds when you're breastfeeding, you've probably heard them say that breastfeeding should not hurt. And this is the actual fact of breastfeeding, is that it should not be painful. That being said, there is sometimes the initial soreness in the beginning, especially for a new mom, for the nipples to kind of like get used to the constant sucking, because you're gonna have baby on there very, very often. So some moms will experience some soreness. If you're also a mom who typically has issues with nipple soreness outside of pregnancy or outside of breastfeeding, you may experience some soreness. But there's a difference between it being sore and it being painful to breastfeed. So it might be sore, but it should not be painful. And if you're experiencing pain, there's a couple of things that you need to kind of rule out before, kind of like to figure out what your plan will be, what you need to do in order for the pain to go away, basically. Let me just start with an experience that I had with a mother that came in to see me. I used to be a breastfeeding peer counselor for WIC, and I worked in the WIC clinic. And we usually saw moms first when they were pregnant, and that's when they would get their initial breastfeeding class. And then we would see them at their first appointment, which tends to be around 2 weeks. The baby tends to be about 2 weeks old. Sometimes a little bit longer, just depending on how long it takes you to get into your WIC and to get your appointment. It's always, just as a FYI, if you have WIC, it's always good to call WIC right away, as soon as the baby's born, so that you can get your appointment as soon as possible. The frustration that I had as a WIC breastfeeding peer counselor is that a lot of times a mom will have difficulty breastfeeding, possibly painful nipples, and we don't see her until 2 weeks old, till the baby's like 2 weeks. Any problems that she's had in those first 2 weeks can affect whether she's still breastfeeding at 2 weeks, whether like if sometimes with nipple, if the baby's latched wrong and she's having nipple pain, she doesn't say anything, she doesn't have the support or doesn't talk to somebody who specializes in lactation or her own doctor or nurse, by the time they see you, they could have, a major nipple damage or nipple, trauma. And by then it's an issue where then we're now trying to first heal her nipples and then get the baby, get the baby latched correctly. But a lot of times if a mom comes in and she's already has major nipple trauma, then it's like we have to stop breastfeeding like the baby on that nipple because it's way too painful for the mom, and we have to heal it. In the meantime, mom's got to pump or hand express, and that doesn't feel good either. So that was the frustration. I think I used to wish that we could do home visits. I know some WIC peer counselors do that. Some states have a program that provides that. my job as a WIC peer was to contact the moms when the babies were born, to try to contact them within the first week, just so that we could touch base. If there's been any difficulty, we can like catch it before it gets too bad. But like for myself, I was one peer for 5,000 WIC, members, and most of those are pregnant or breastfeeding mom, or not breastfeeding, but possibly breastfeeding moms. Most moms will try to breastfeed to start. So 70% of moms, do try, and or at least do it in the beginning. And so that was a frustration. But the experience that I had, and I would say that it's pretty common for moms to have nipple soreness, but not nipple pain. And I didn't see that many moms that had experienced painful breastfeeding. But I did have one in particular, and sometimes nipple size can cause that. Like I said, I'll kind of talk about some of the different things that you can do, but some of the different reasons why you may have some nipple soreness. And the one I already mentioned is just getting used to breastfeeding a lot. And one way that you can avoid just the normal discomfort is to allow your nipples to air dry after breastfeeding. So don't immediately, put your bra back on, let it air dry. Make sure that it's good and dry before you, put your bra back. And then if you have breast pads, do not leave them wet on the nipple. Make sure that the nipple is staying dry. You don't want it to be dry, but you want it to be, you don't want moisture sitting there, and that's what's going to cause it to. We know what moisture does, and when you rub on it, it starts to cause like an abrasion, and we don't want that. So you need to make sure that your nipples air dry after breastfeeding. This is something my sister taught me before I had my 4 kids. She had her 3, and the one thing she always stressed to me was, let your nipples air dry. Do not, immediately cover them. And I never experienced I never experienced breastfeeding pain at all with my first 3, but my baby, the 4th, I did have really bad sore nipples, and they didn't bleed, but they were cracked, and it was so extremely painful. Like you just want to cry every time they get on. And the problem with that was she was a preemie, and she was not latching very well because her mouth was so small. So I couldn't really avoid the soreness just because she wasn't breastfeeding. She couldn't breastfeed correctly. But as soon as she got a little bit bigger, that problem went away. So you can experience that problem if the baby's mouth is really small and they're not able to latch very well. And I will put a link below about things that you can do to take care of your nipples to help keep them from getting bruised or cracked or bleeding. And if they are sore, what you can do to kind of help soothe them. And so that you're not experiencing that pain. So the mother that I saw at the WIC clinic, her nipples were, I'm not going to say they were extremely large, but they were on the larger side. And the baby, of course, is small, and their mouth is small. And so the baby, when I can't remember if it was a girl or boy. I think it was a girl. When she would latch, she wasn't latching deep enough, which means she was more nipple feeding instead of breastfeeding. So you want more of the breast in their mouth than the nipple. So of course their mouth needs to be as wide as you can possibly get it. Get your breast inside their mouth. And pinching behind the nipple, the dark skin behind the nipple, pinching as much of that as you can to get it into their mouth, as much breast into their mouth as possible will help with that. So when she came in, the baby was mainly nipple feeding. She was in tears when the baby would get on. So two problems that she was having is, one, when she would put the baby on and it would hurt, of course, it was very painful for her. And immediately I saw that the baby was not latched correctly. The baby was nipple feeding. So I said, okay, let's take the baby off and let's get him on deeper. And instead of breaking the suction with her finger by pressing, putting your finger inside the baby's mouth and pressing down, break the suction and then pull the nipple out, she was just pulling the baby off, which is just like, pulling the suction is very strong on a baby, and pulling your nipple out, that's going to cause bruising, and pain to your nipple. That's going to cause trauma to your nipple. So you definitely want to break the suction and get their mouth open and then, remove them from the breast. You do not want to pull. I would say you're going to be removing the baby from your breast, but you really want to remove your breast from the baby's mouth. And you want to do that by breaking the suction and getting the baby off the breast, not pulling them off the breast. This is the two things that I could see that were causing her nipple pain. And as soon as I showed her how to get the baby latched correctly, immediately she started crying because it didn't hurt. It was perfect. And she realized that if the baby's latched correctly, it shouldn't hurt. So when you have larger nipples, it's really important to make sure the baby's latching as much of the breast as possible. If they're only nipple feeding, it is going to be extremely painful. It's harder to nipple feed if your nipples are a little bit smaller. So definitely, that's your biggest thing, is making sure they're latched onto as much breast as possible. And also when you unlatch them, breaking that suction and removing your breast from their mouth without pulling them off like that. Also, you want to make sure that the baby's stomach is facing your stomach. So they should be completely stomach to stomach with you. They should not be having to turn their head to nurse. It should be the breast and their mouth should be in line with each other. So another thing is different positions. Sometimes if you move them into a different position, they latch better. So let's say you're having sore nipples, just the soreness from them latching. Maybe some babies are really aggressive at the breast. And so we would tell a mom to breastfeed more often. It sounds funny to say that, but let's say you're feeding your baby every 2 to 3 hours. Breast milk is only in their stomach for about an hour and a half. So by the time you feed them at, let's say, 3-hour mark, they're really hungry. So they're very aggressive at the breast. So by feeding them a little bit earlier, like at the hour and a half mark, they're less aggressive, and sometimes that can help with them sucking at the breast. Another pain that people talk about is while they're breastfeeding, it isn't the nipple that hurts, it's the breast. It depends. When you feel the letdown, it feels a little bit like pins and needles. That goes away after a minute or so. I don't even think it's a minute, because that's just your initial letdown. Sometimes when you're really full and you have a lot of milk in there, it kind of, I don't know, it feels good, and yet it hurts a little bit at the same time when they start breastfeeding because it's so full and you've got this. But it should not be painful to where like you're cringing, like you're having to grab hold of something, or you're tearing up, or you're crying because it hurts so bad. Definitely something is not right if that happens. If you're having breast pain continuously through the whole feed, there could be a plugged duct. There could be something called thrush, and it can affect the breast. But again, these are less likely. Those aren't something you're going to automatically have. So if you're a pregnant mom, you don't need to worry about plugged ducts. As long as you're breastfeeding enough, you're not missing a bunch of feeds, you shouldn't experience plugged ducts. Personally, for me, I never experienced plugged ducts or mastitis with my 4 kids and breastfeeding all of them. So it's not as normal, is that the word I want to say, Sometimes you can feel like it, you hear people talk about it a lot, but people tend to talk more about the bad experiences than the good experiences. So you hear more of the bad just because that's what people voice. They're looking for help or whatever, so that's what you'll hear. And then a lot of times a mom, once she feels pain, she doesn't want anything else to do with the breastfeeding. So she may never have fixed the problem and then that she just feels that it hurts. It's supposed, that's just how it is for her. But had someone maybe observed the baby feeding, they might have found what the problem was. And again, sometimes a baby is extremely small, their mouth is small, the nipple size is kind of big, and so it's harder for that baby to latch correctly. And that can cause some nipple damage and soreness. So in that case, like I said, latching is really important, and I will link below something that shows what a good latch is, although I do have some videos that talk about it. I will link that below, and then I will also link, how to care for your nipples. In the shower, you don't want to put soap on them. The safest thing to put on your nipples that doesn't harm the baby is lanolin. It can stay on on your nipple, and you don't have to wash it off. Some have had good experiences with oils. I've never used oils. I just use lanolin. You can use that in between feeds. So there's, those are really important things. I'm trying to think of some other nipple. Okay, another time where you could experience some nipple pain and pain while you're breastfeeding is when your milk first increases, which is between day 3 to 5. And that's when your breasts are really full and engorged. And when that happens, the breast gets really, really hard because they're so full. And if you can't pinch the dark skin around the nipple, if you can't pinch that, then the baby's not going to be able to latch correctly. So a lot of times this is where latching starts, you start having latching issues, is when that breast is really full. So baby was latching great at the hospital, and then all of a sudden you come home and the baby's struggling with latch. A lot of times that can be due to engorgement. And so what you need to do is soften the breast just enough, like you might need to do some hand expression, a little bit of pumping, just enough to be able to, if once you can pinch that skin, the baby can latch, then you're okay. But a mom who, let's say the baby does latch while she's engorged, but they're not latching well because the breast is so full, you can start to experience some pain. The best thing that I can say is if you feel pain while you're breastfeeding and you take them off and you try again and nothing you do is solving the problem, don't wait more than 24 hours. In fact, don't even wait 24 hours. If you can get help right away, calling a lactation consultant, maybe from the hospital that you delivered at. If you're with WIC, calling and speaking with, somebody at WIC. Sometimes a lot of them have peer counselors, so maybe you can talk with a peer counselor. But even if they don't have a peer counselor, usually there's somebody there that can help you with the breastfeeding part of it and be able to observe the baby feeding and get you help right away. If you're experiencing pain and you breastfeed through it, you will damage your nipple. And then the work that it takes to heal the nipple and the time that it's going to take is going to be so much worse if we can just catch it in time and you don't do any damage to the nipple itself. We don't want to cause trauma to the nipple itself. So if you're experiencing pain, try to get help right away. If all it is that you can go to your doctor and have them observe, like the pediatrician, or going online and observing, looking up on YouTube some videos on latching or nipple soreness and what you can do. The link that I'm going to put below is from a pediatrician who is a breastfeeding specialist. He is really, really, he has a breastfeeding clinic in Canada, I believe. He wrote a book on breastfeeding. He goes all around the world and gives breastfeeding speeches, talks. does a lot of training for those of us that are breastfeeding specialists. And he will answer emails. And he has a lot of really good videos on his website. So I'm going to link that below so that you can check out that. So definitely get help right away if you're experiencing pain while breastfeeding. It should not be painful. It should not hurt. If it hurts, then something isn't right. So we've got to fix it before any more damage is done, or that any damage is done to the nipple itself. If it's just sore, but it's not, there's no bleeding, that the baby's latched correctly, it might just take a week or so for your nipples to get used to it. But like I said, get help right away if it hurts, just so that someone can observe it. You can talk with them about what you're experiencing, and they can like reassure you, make sure everything's okay, and then, you know, we won't do any harm to your nipples themselves. That's my biggest concern, because there are moms that come in so late in the game, and it is just their, you know, nipples are just severely wounded, and getting them to heal is not easy. So don't even wait 24 hours if you don't have to. Like, try to get help right away, and see what you can do to eliminate that pain. And if you know, it's something where you have to wait to talk to somebody till the next day, you might want to pump or hand express and give the baby the milk through, not a bottle, but through like a medicine syringe or a spoon or a little medicine cup, just until you can see somebody and get that. Because I'm just telling you, the pain of the damage, the pain of actual trauma to the nipple, and the work that it takes to heal it is so much more. It's not necessary. Like, it's something that can be prevented, and that's what we want to do. We want to make sure you don't get to that point. So I hope that answers your question about whether breastfeeding should hurt or not. I'm sorry again for it being a long video. Lately, the videos have been kind of long, but it is hard to teach things about breastfeeding in like a 10-minute video. Like I said, I'll put some links below in the description box for you to check out. And if you have any questions, please feel free to comment below, or to email me if it's not something you want to ask, you know, in the comments. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that it helps you, and I will see you guys in my next video. Have a great day.